So for this tutorial, I'm going to be taking the Bernat Blanket Big yarn. So this is a jumbo weight 7 yarn, and I found this at Michael's craft store. They were on sale for $8 a roll, so I got 2. So I'm gonna make kind of a smaller blanket, but feel free to stock up on more. This is, let's see, I think it's like 32 yards. So it's gonna be kind of a smaller blanket. I'm probably gonna use it for my baby, so keep that in mind. If you wanna continue this and make it larger, you totally can. This yarn is so beautiful. It's like kind of like it almost has like a rosy undertone, but it's very like linen beige. It's just so pretty. So I'm gonna be crocheting with my hands because the recommended hook size is a 25 millimeter hook, which I do not have. So I'm going to show you guys, if you ever have large jumbo yarn, how to just crochet with your fingers. To get started, the concept is basically exactly the same as if you were crocheting with a crochet hook. So this tutorial is also very nice for beginners because it teaches you the concepts of crocheting with your hands, and then when you throw in a needle, it's exactly the same. So I'm going to make a slip knot by twisting the yarn and then pulling the tail through. And so the idea about crocheting with your fingers is you're going to want to keep the chain that you're working through on your finger about 2 inches in length. So I'm going to begin making a basic chain. So I have 2 of my fingers through the little loop. I'm just going to grab the working yarn and pull that through. Again, make sure you're only pulling it through about 2 inches in length. So I'm just going to continue and make a chain. I'll let you know how many I end up doing, probably around 20 to 30 chains long, but I'm just going to continue grabbing and pulling through. So now I've finished my row of chains. I did a total of 25. So I'm just gonna stop right here. You can make this longer if you want your blanket to be longer. I'm just gonna stop here for my size, but to get started on the second row, all I'm going to do is pull through one more time. So I'll have a total of 26 chains technically. And then this chain that I just pulled through, I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to go over to the very next chain down the row. So what I'm going to do is, with my 2 fingers through that working chain, I'm going to stick them through that second chain from where I am. So I'm skipping this little loop right here, going through the second one. So I have both of my fingers through that. I'm going to pull the working yarn through the first loop. So I'll have 2 loops left on my finger. Then I'm going to pull the working yarn again through the 2 loops on my finger. So essentially we're just single crocheting with our hands. So now I am still through the working loop, and I'm going to make my way down to the very next chain in the row. I'm going to place my fingers through that chain, pull the working yarn just through that first chain. So I'll still have the 2 loops on my finger, and then I'm going to pull the working yarn again through both of those. So that is how you start on the second row. It looks very braided and chunky. I absolutely love this. So I'm just going to continue down. I'll show you one more time for the beginners. So I'm going to find that very next chain down on the row. It's kind of hard to see if you're a beginner where the chains are, but it's just these little loops that go across the top. So these are the chains. So with my fingers through that working chain, I'm going to place them through that very next chain down the row. Pull the working yarn through that chain. Then I'll have the 2 loops on my finger. I'm going to pull the working yarn through both of those. So I'm just going to continue doing this to every chain in this row. And make sure that your working chain isn't pulled too much so it's so loose. You want to keep it about 2 fingers or 2 inches in length. So now I've finished that first row. As you can see, it makes this like braided, almost like a pretzel look. I am so obsessed with this. It's so thick and soft and really nice. So now as you can see, I did my last chain. So to get started on the next row, I'm just going to chain 1. So I'm going to have my fingers through that working chain, pull the working yarn through that, and now I have an additional loop. So that is a chain 1 to turn the work. So I'm gonna flip this blanket over, and then now I'm going to begin on going back through each chain. So now for the chains, as you can see, you're going to be working through the entire chain. So the chain is going to have a back loop and a front loop through it. So this is what you're going to be sticking your fingers through. It's kind of confusing to see because this yarn is so chunky, but this very first loop that is connected to that chain 1, I'm going to stick my fingers through both of those loops. So that is the entire chain. I'm going to pull the working yarn through these 2 loops. I'll have 2 left on my finger again. I'm going to pull the working yarn through those 2. So that is the first single crochet of the row. So I'm going to go back through, find the next set of chain. So this is the 2 loops, place my fingers through that, pull the working yarn through that, and then pull the working yarn through the 2 loops left on my finger. So I'm going to continue this all the way down, placing 1 single crochet in each chain. It definitely gets easier to identify the loops as you go along. And if you are familiar with crocheting, you're basically just placing single crochets with your fingers, which is actually very fun. So I'm having a good time doing this. So I'm at the very end of the row, and as you can see, I have 1 chain left, and then this kind of horizontal chain across is the chain 1 from the row beneath it. So I'm not going to be doing anything with that. So just identify that last chain, place your last single crochet through that chain, then you will be finished with the row. So then again, to begin on the next row, you're going to be doing the same thing, chaining 1 with your fingers. So just pull the working yarn through, create a second loop, flip over the work, and then you can get started again on the next row. So you're basically just going to be repeating rows of that single crochet. So just identify the first chain of the row, stick your fingers through that, pull the working yarn through that chain, and then pull the working yarn through those 2 loops left on your hook. So this is basically the entire blanket pattern. It's super fun to do, and I love how thick and how soft this blanket is working up. I definitely recommend to try this. It's certainly a lot of fun, and you'll get a really super soft, thick blanket. So yeah, I'm just gonna continue this. I'll let you guys know how many rows I end up doing and the measurements of only working 2 balls of yarn. So if you would like to add additional balls of yarn, you could kind of gauge how big the blanket will be. So yeah, I'm just gonna continue working this and I'll show you guys the finished result. So this is what I've gotten so far just with the 2 balls of yarn. I would definitely recommend getting a few more balls of yarn. This is really only good for like a laying mat for a baby. So, but yeah, so the pattern that it kind of works up to is just really nice, chunky, very thick. Yeah, so I hope you guys like this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I will see you in my next video.